Hey everyone, thanks a lot for coming to the session. I hope you're having an amazing festival. I found it super interesting. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Alex, and I'm the founder of Advanceful. So Advanceful is a LinkedIn ads agency with a purpose-driven approach. So I wanted to start the presentation by sharing something that I've seen, something that really breaks my heart. I've seen, as Andrew said, many companies trying LinkedIn ads and then spending a lot of money or even not getting a positive return on investment. So there are many reasons why this happened. So for example, some of the companies, they might try to launch a cold campaign to a cold audience and try to capture demand instead of generating demand. Some other campaigns, they might try to run some lead gen forms with, not a great ebook and then sending the content downloads to the sales team, which is not too cool. But I think that one of the reasons is that, companies try to launch LinkedIn ads, but they don't take advantage of the full marketing ecosystem. So this is everything they've produced, all the content, all the audience that these people have, and they don't take advantage of that. So as I said, this really breaks my heart because they don't get the return on investment, and they might run LinkedIn ads for 1, 2 months, 3 months, spend a lot of money, because LinkedIn ads is not cheap, and they stop it. So I'm here to fix that, and I don't want that to happen to any of you. So that's why I created this presentation, and today I'll be talking about how to effectively integrate LinkedIn ads with your marketing ecosystem to drive not only leads, but also revenue. So for those of you who are not familiar with LinkedIn ads, basically it's one of the best paid channels for B2B marketing. Even of the best. It's great because it lets you target a specific company traits. So, for example, you can target ICPs by job titles, job seniorities, using the job function, and it works amazingly, especially if you're a B2B company with a high ticket value. So let's say more than 10K per year annually. It can also work for B2C with a caveat. So as I said before, LinkedIn ads is quite expensive. So your ticket value needs to be high just to make it up for the high cost. It also has some practicalities. So if you compare it with Google Ads, with Meta Ads, their pixel is more mature, so you can basically trust the pixel. Here on LinkedIn, the pixel is not as great, so it requires a little bit of manual work, but it definitely makes a difference if you do it right. It's also, LinkedIn ads don't work on a silo. So you can't launch a LinkedIn campaign to a cold audience with a couple of ads and start expecting leads to flow in. It doesn't work like that because you really need to get LinkedIn ads integrated into your wider marketing ecosystem. So think of your traffic from Google Ads, Meta Ads, and also all the content, everything you've produced so far. And that's what we're going to cover today. But before going into that, I also wanted to share the framework. So this is a strategy that I normally use, so we can set the anchor. And this is an example of the campaign structure that I use for a B2B company with high ticket value, approximately 10K per year, and the expenditure is between 5 to 10K euros per month. So I divide the campaign in 3 different layers. So the first one is the cold layer. So here, the goal is to get your product in front of the right people and make them stop, right? So make them create a hook so they get interested in what you do, explain what you do as a company. So they interact with this cold layer and they move to the next layer, which is the retargeting layer. So some of the ad types that I use here is basically you can use pain point and solutions, subject matter expertise, and also here are the results of working with our company. And also a small caveat. Hello? Okay. A small caveat. So depending on your audience size, so if you create a campaign and your audience size is less than 30K, for example, then you would need to take the ABM approach, which is a little bit different in the sense that you need to include more ads and you also need to include more testimonials, case studies, because this audience is smaller, so you need a little bit more variety. So they don't see every time the same ad. And now moving to the retargeting layer, here the goal would be to get all these people that interacted with the cold layer and also all the people that you get on your website, right? From organic traffic, from Meta ads, Google ads, etc. And the goal is to educate them, to explain them why your company is the best solution for their needs, and also to trust you. They really need to trust you for this to work. So some of the ad types that I use here are basically social proof, case studies, and also results from working with your company. And then we got the last layer, which is the conversion layer, which is the equivalent to the bottom of the funnel. So here you got the audience that already interacted with the retargeting layer. They've seen your ads, your case studies, testimonials, so they kind of trust you, and they might respond better to a stronger call to action, such as book a demo or sign up. And yes, you guessed right. The goal here is to get them to book a demo with you and to redeem the highest offer that you are offering them. So some of the ad types that I use here are, again, social proof, personal stories, results, and the key is to include a stronger call to action. Okay, so here you can see how the different layers interact with each other. So the first touch point would be the code layer. Then they would move to the retargeting layer, where they also get the traffic from the website, organic, PPC, etc. And then finally, the conversion layer. So now we know what LinkedIn ads are, and we are familiar with the framework. So how do we put all this knowledge, and how do we integrate LinkedIn ads with our marketing ecosystem? So the first thing we need to do is we need to look for opportunities within your current marketing ecosystem. So there are 4 pillars that I normally look when trying to get these opportunities. And the first one is the audience. So one of the mistakes that I've seen some companies is when they try to launch LinkedIn ads for the first time. As I said before, they launch a code layer, and they don't even look or think about retargeting layers. They don't look at their website traffic. And I think they're missing out because, it's much easier to sell your product or service to someone who is farther in the funnel, to a warm audience, that if you compare it with the cold layer that they never heard about you. So this is something that you need to look into. And the question now is, how do you find this retargeting layer? How do you find this existing website traffic on LinkedIn? Let's go to that. So the first thing you need to do is you need to install the LinkedIn Insight Tag Manager. So this is the equivalent to the pixel from Facebook, from Meta, from Google Ads. And it's quite easy to do it. There are 3 ways to do it. So you can install it yourself, you can send it to your developer, or you can use a third-party provider like Google Tag Manager, which this is my favorite option. But you also need to check with your compliance and GDPR department, because depending on your structure, it might not be 100% compliant. So check with them. The bad thing about this, it's not bad, but it requires a little bit of planning. So if you want to launch a campaign, you need to install the tag a little bit earlier, because it doesn't get the data retrospectively. So that means that if you want to launch a campaign, I would advise you to install this Insight Tag Manager at least 60 or 90 days before. So the second part here, now we have the pixel. So now we have to look into the website retargeting audience. How do we find this? So it's quite easy. So here you can see that you can build your audience with LinkedIn ads. There are 2 ways of doing this, or there are 2 different website traffic groups, we could say it. So the first one would be the general one. You can create a retargeting audience with the general traffic. So in this case, example.com. But there is something else that you can do. You can create a specific retargeting audience from specific pages, which I think is the most powerful. So for example, think of your book a demo page, your pricing page, your product page. And also you can think of building specific audiences of people who've visited your book a demo page, but also your pricing. So you can do those combinations and create a specific ads to that audience. Also, if you're a multi-site platform, or if you have different products or offers, you can also create a specific audience for your different ICPs. So for example, if you are selling a product for employers and employees, you can create an audience with the keyword employee, and you can create an audience with the keyword employer. So you have those ICPs differentiated. And something also that you can do that is quite cool is you can use UTMs to build specific audiences from your paid campaigns. So this is the traffic from your Google Ads, Meta Ads, etc. So for those of you who are not familiar with what a UTM is, it's basically a snippet of text that you add to a URL, and it gives you the information of the source, medium, campaign, term, and content. So you can personalize this on LinkedIn. And looking into the time frame, so you can create website audiences ranging from 14 days in the past to 180 days in the past. But remember to install the LinkedIn Insight tag first. So now the second avenue would be to set up your LinkedIn company audience. So I'm assuming that all of you guys have a company page. If not, you can go and create one now after the presentation. So the good thing about this is that you can create specific retargeting audiences from people who visited your organization page, but also from people who clicked on the call to action of your page, which is higher intent. And my recommendation would be to create those two audiences separated, because it would fit great depending on your structure. And the good news about this is that it works retrospectively. So you can create the LinkedIn company traffic retargeting now, and it would go up to 365 days. So amazing. Okay, so we've looked into how to create the website traffic audience. We've also looked into the LinkedIn company page. And now let's look into a different avenue, which might be interesting as well, but also a little bit tricky, which is the data from your CRM. So it's super crucial that before getting the data from your CRM, you really think yourself, do a little bit of introspection and think, okay, what type of people in my CRM can have an interest on, the product, in which stages they are, so you can integrate them in the right funnel. So there are two examples that I normally use for my clients. So the first one are the MQLs. So think of webinar attendees, people who downloaded specific content, and also even newsletter signups. There's also the data from sales. So of course, you need to be very careful with this when it comes to the GDPR compliance, because depending on your structure, you might not be able to do this. But I would advise you to talk to your sales team, align with them, and you can select specific deal stages that you can add to your LinkedIn traffic audience. And again, check with the GDPR. So this is great, but how do we actually do this? So if you're using HubSpot, it's your lucky day because it's super easy. So the first step is you go and create an active list. You use some specific filters. So for example, lifestyles stage equals MQL, or select specific deal stages. And now you can create a contact list or a company list. And the great news about this is that it automatically synchronizes it with LinkedIn. So if there is any new client, any new MQL, it gets synced automatically. You don't need to do anything, which is amazing. If you're not using HubSpot and using Salesforce or ActiveCampaign, you can also use Zapier, but it takes a little bit of work. And if you want to do it manually, I mean, that's okay too. You do you, but there's also a way to do this, and I'll explain it. So what you need to do is you need to decide if you're gonna create a contact list or a company list. And depending on that, then you'll go to LinkedIn and you'll get this amazing template that you need to fill. The most important fields are email, website, and website URL for companies. And for contact, the same, but also the LinkedIn URL. Those are the best fields. So you get a higher match percentage when you export it to LinkedIn. So we've looked into how to use our existing audience. So now let's look into our existing content. So again, another mistake that I'm seeing in some companies is that they say, okay, let's launch a LinkedIn campaign and they send a brief to the designer, and there's no introspection on, okay, what content do we have, what worked well. So that's not great, in my opinion. So I would encourage you to think on all the content you've created. So think of, if you have a newsletter, you can promote it in the retargeting layer as a lead gen form. If you have, a PDF or an ebook that is working great, you can use it in the retargeting layer. Think if your company appeared on the news, you can take a screenshot and use it as an ad and use it as a social proof. Think if any of your clients has a great testimonial about you, you can use all this content. So I know it takes a little bit of time, but what I've done is I've created a template, so it's easier for my clients, and I'm happy to share this template with you later on. So what I would recommend you to do is just sit down for 1-2 hours, because it's going to be totally worth it. Select all the content you've created, and then filter it or classify it by format, content type, funnel stage, the topic, and what's more important, the inbound impact. So look at the metrics, talk to your sales team, and ask, hey, tell me, the best organic piece that generated inbounds or generated conversations on LinkedIn, and use that content for your ads, because you already have the validation that is already working and driving inbound leads. So you can use this for your campaigns. There are many types of ads that you can do once you get the content, but today I wanted to share with you one that I find super interesting, and it's actually new. It was launched approximately 1 month ago by LinkedIn, and it's called the LinkedIn Thought Leader Ads. So these ads, they are also known as the influencer ads, and look something like this. So you can see here an organic post, and then a little bit that says promoted by your company. So I think this is a great game changer, because if you think about LinkedIn, LinkedIn is a peer-to-peer platform. It's not, it's a peer-to-peer platform, and people trust people more than they trust companies. So there are many ways of how you can use this and integrate it into your campaign strategy. And I'll just share a couple of them that I'm using for my clients. So the first one are testimonials. So you can see if there's any client that posted anything good about your company on LinkedIn, and you can talk to them and say, hey, can I promote this post? And you can actually frame it to say, hey, this is actually going to be good for you because I'm going to send traffic to your personal profile, and you can also build that personal brand, which some people really like. And the only thing you need to do is you need to ask them to include your company as their job experience, because you can only sponsor posts from your current employees at this moment. So the workaround is I just tell them to say, hey, can you say that you are an strategic advisor or a partner or something similar to your client, and then you can sponsor those posts. And I think this is much more powerful, because it's not the same to say, hey, as a Martech festival, come to the festival is great, that getting you guys posting about on LinkedIn and say, hey, this festival is amazing, and the people who trust you, they will know that the Martech festival is great. So for me, this is a game changer. You can also post some educational content. So if you have someone who has a great following of your ICPs, you can talk to him or her and create an organic content strategy, and you can take those posts and sponsor them on the retargeting layer. And I think this is quite interesting and an alternative to lead gen forms, for example. You can also use it in the conversion layer for book a demo. So, like the normal process, people go to the book a demo page, they leave their details, and then they receive an email from the sales guy. So imagine if the people went through the cold layer and the retargeting layer, they already know you. And in the book a demo, in the conversion layer, they see a video from from the sales team saying, hey, I'm Tom, this is what I can do for your company, a little bit of introduction, so make it a little bit more human. And, I think this is a great thing that is working for my clients. Also, the last bit you can do is you can promote the culture. So especially if you are recruiting, you can sponsor some of the posts from your employees talking about how great your company is. And if you don't have some, please don't brute force it. Let it happen naturally. So we've covered the two first pillars, the audience and the content. So now let's look into the sales ecosystem. And I think that sales is your best ally here, so you better make friends with them. Because if you think about it, the sales team is constantly talking to your ICPs, to the clients, prospect, etc. So they really know what they think, what are their objections, what is stopping them from converting. So what I would recommend is talk to your sales team, create a list of all the objections from client and prospect, and then select some content that addresses those objections. And if you don't have that content, you can create it, because you can use it in the retargeting layer, and I think it's quite powerful. Also, the second bit, it's you will need to align with the sales team on how to follow up the leads. The first thing you need to do is you need to classify the leads, right? Because it's not the same someone who wants to book a demo, that's someone who wants who downloaded a specific content, or someone who just interacted with your post. And you need to agree on what is the follow-up process for each type of lead. And the final bit would be, there's something interesting that I've seen with sales teams, with salespeople, is that some of them are slowly transitioning to thought leaders, right? So I've seen many people on LinkedIn building a personal brand, and I think if they have the right ICPs, you can talk to your sales team and create an organic content strategy just to reach your ICPs through that person. And if you don't have that person in your company, you can talk to the sales team, because maybe they would be interested in doing this type of thing. And the final pillar would be to actually review your tracking. So, and by tracking, I mean the conversion tracking. So the first thing you need to do is calculate your conversion value. So there are many ways how you can do this, but how I normally do it, it's I take the average deal value, or I take the value from the CRM, and then I work backwards. So if you know the conversion rate from MQL to opportunity and from book a demo to MQL, then you can assign a specific value to each conversion along the funnel. So you know if the campaign is working, and you can easily calculate the return on ad expenditure. And there are two types of conversion value. So the first one is the high impact. So think of book a demo, sign up, etc. And the second one would be visit to specific pages. So for example, think of people who visit your book a demo page. I would create a smaller conversion value and assign it a smaller amount, because this way you can really track what's happening in the funnel. Okay, so now how do you set up the conversions on LinkedIn? So you can set two different types of conversions. So the first one is the last thoughts for each campaign, and the second one is the last thoughts for last campaign. I would advise you to create those two different conversions, because then you can not only see what is the creative that gave you the final conversion, but you can also see the journey and which ads contributed to that final conversion. And of course, you would assign a different value to each of them. And how to technically do this? So there are several ways, but the easiest one is to create some redirect pages. So for example, when people go to your book a demo page and then submit for the demo, then you can redirect them to a URL that is something like bookademo/thank you. So you can tag that specific website URL and then assign it a value. There's a different way where you can do this via Google Tag Manager, but you would need the help from your developer. Okay, so now we've covered the 4 pillars on how to review your marketing ecosystem. The first one was the audience, the second one is the content, and talk to sales, and we finally got the conversion tracking. So now it's time to launch the campaign. So we covered the retargeting traffic earlier. So now when you're going to build your campaign, you have 2 options. You can launch the retargeting campaign first, or you can launch the cold campaign first. So what I advise you is try to launch the retargeting first. And if you have an audience of less than 1K, then you will need to launch the cold campaign first, so you can build up that retargeting size audience. And if you have more than 1K, then you can launch your retargeting campaign as the first step, because that's easier. Okay, so this is just a small tutorial. I mean, most of you have launched LinkedIn ad campaigns, so you will know it, but for the people who are watching it online, maybe it will be interesting. So here's when you select the objective. So I normally use website visits, lead generation, and you can also use, for thought leaders ad, for example, you need to use brand awareness and engagement. You can't use website visit. Then here is when you select your targeting. So think of specific job titles if your ICPs are quite narrow, or you can use job function plus job seniority plus company size plus industry. And there's something important here, it's never enable audience expansion, because that basically tells the LinkedIn algorithm to try to find more similar people, but I think it's better if you select those filters yourself. And something that I normally use for my clients is I try to exclude specific people. So think of all your clients. You want to exclude them from your campaigns, because remember, LinkedIn ads is quite expensive, so let's try to optimize. You can also exclude your current employees and your competitors. And if you have an app, you can also exclude all the users from that app for 99% of the cases. Here are the different type of ad formats, so single image, carousel, video, follower document, etc. That depending on the campaign that you're launching, then you can select whatever you need. And here, there's something important as well. Never enable the LinkedIn audience network, because basically what it does, it takes your traffic outside from LinkedIn, and basically you end up spending a lot of money with little return. And if you really want to try this out, just create a campaign, duplicate it, and then enable the audience network in one and leave it off in the other, so you can compare results. And here, this part here is where you set up your budget and the bidding. So what's super important here is there are 3 different types of bidding strategies. So you can do maximum delivery, which basically tells LinkedIn to get the maximum results with the maximum budget. I wouldn't normally recommend this unless your click-through rate is super high, like more than 1%. Then we got cost cap, and then we got manual bidding. So manual bidding is what I normally use. And what I try to do is I try to bid just a bit lower than what LinkedIn recommends. And then I let the campaign run for 1 day or maybe 2. And I look into some metrics like the click-through rate, the engagement rate, etc. And depending on that, and also the average daily spend. And depending on that, I adjust the bid higher or lower. And we also got the conversion tracking. So remember all the conversions you created in the previous steps. So now you can select the conversions and add them to your campaign, so you can keep track on what's working. And finally, this is the part where you would take all the content that you've reviewed and you can produce the ads to include it to your specific campaign. So now the last step is click on Launch Campaign, and congratulations, you've effectively integrated LinkedIn ads in your marketing ecosystem. Okay, so thanks a lot for coming and for the presentation. And now it's time to answer some questions. Thank you.
It's very interesting. Thanks. Quite insightful, technically, about the marketing system. Maybe it's not a very wise question to ask. But let's say we do not have any data. So you mentioned you can only do a campaign with your existing data, call to action. So is there anything which we can do, or let's say LinkedIn ads permit with respect to getting the lead into the marketing ecosystem, like getting those emails back into the HubSpot from LinkedIn? If they go to our web page, or they click on it, and then okay, we know that, or is it against privacy? We cannot have that.
So if you don't have a big audience of data, you can't launch a retargeting campaign, but you can launch a cold campaign. So you can create one campaign and select your ICPs. So you would select what industries, what job titles, the company size, and then you would launch that campaign to them. So you can actually create a LinkedIn campaign. It's just that it's a bit more effective if you already have that data. But if you don't, you can create it.
Will I get the company email whole campaign? Like my ad will be shown on the company webpage, or it will be shown on the people who are working inside the company?
So the ad will be shown on the LinkedIn feed, and it will be shown to the people that you selected from your company page. If that makes sense. It won't be shown on your website. It will be shown on the LinkedIn feed from your company page.
When you're targeting LinkedIn campaigns, you can obviously target which approach is better or worse.
So I think it really depends on your audience and your type of company. So for example, if your ICP is super narrow and then you are only selling to head of strategic marketing or director of marketing, then I would encourage you to try job titles only. But if you have a wider audience, you can also try job function plus seniorities. And the only problem I see with that is that there are some job titles that are like super job titles. So if you select marketing specialist, then you select like other people that are not specifically marketing specialists, but they also fall into that category. So my advice would be to try both those two campaigns and compare results.
So when you started your presentation, thank you, by the way. Hello. Okay. Thanks for your presentation. Very interesting. You started your presentation by saying that LinkedIn is the B2B platform. I wonder in which markets that applies. Because I know in the Netherlands, for example, LinkedIn is huge. I know in Germany they also have something different. I'm not completely seeing. Yeah. So in which markets does this apply? Is it everywhere around Europe, or I know we have some US audience here as well. Like, where does it apply?
So in my experience, mostly in the US, UK is a good market as well, Australia. And then in Europe, I would say generally speaking, but there are some countries that I've never retargeted, so I couldn't answer the question completely. But I could tell you that the best market for my clients are US, UK, Australia, Germany as well, I think. So yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Marco. I have a question about very close to this one. Language of the ad doesn't matter. LinkedIn is predominantly English, but what we observe at least is that French audience reacts better to the French content. German audience reacts better to German content. So what's your take on that?
I think it would depend on your audience, so your ICP. So for example, if your target like hyper growth scale-ups, where most of the people are English speaking, then I would say English is fine. If you are targeting more traditional company industries, then I would say localize your content. But in this case, the best answer would be to test it out. So create campaigns in English and then versus localize language and see what's performing better. But you need to be very careful because, it's expensive. So you need to really select your A/B test.
And a second question, if I may. You started talking about UTM parameters in the campaign links. And it's not possible to extract email and details of a specific person in LinkedIn because that's counter terms and conditions. So not really possible. But do you know if it's possible to at least inject a generic attribute of audience, for example, and if your campaign targets travel and food industry, is it possible to inject this industry of the person who clicked on an ad to be included in the UTM, or something non-identifiable but still kind of narrowing down the audience, or would you launch very specific campaigns for very specific audiences with specific UTM characters inside?
So that's a good question. So I think that one workaround that you can do, it's you can see on LinkedIn actually what's performing, and you can divide it by industry, company size, etc. So for example, if you have one campaign and then you want to see the metrics depending on the industry, then you can see the click-through rate, the clicks on that specific industry. And if you want to retarget that industry, then you can retarget that industry in the retargeting layer, if we are talking about the cold layer. Mm-hmm. And in order to include the UTM about industry in that link? I'm not sure I have the answer, but I'll definitely look for it and I'll send it to you.
I feel like the answer is that we will have to have separate campaigns for every single industry and multiple audiences for them. But yeah, I was just curious whether there's a well-known solution for that.
Yeah, but I mean, inside the same campaign, you can see what's performing by industry, so you don't really need to create like different campaigns for each industry, at least in the code layer. You can do that.
But that
in the
information
retargeting
ends on the LinkedIn dashboard, right? You don't necessarily know which audience interacted with which sections of your website, because that ends. You don't know whether the person who read your blog more intently came from a specific industry, because all you get is a click, right?
I think there is some specific add-ons where if you set up those specific conversions that I mentioned before and you give a conversion value to blog 1, blog 2, blog 3, then you can see that performance per industry, but I'll definitely need to triple check that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.